All right, guys. Should we do this? Let's go. Welcome to the Pause, Rewind, Play podcast. We hope you enjoy the show.
Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us today. We are so excited to be here with you talking about movies. We are super excited to be talking about the newest installment from Marvel, Spider-Man.
We are about 3 hours worth of sleep in our body. We have about 3 hours worth of sleep in our body, so we're a little delusional, a little out of control.
That's like
hopefully this
combined between the three of us.
Josh brought like a quart of juice in here too. That's how wow, this is normally has like a couple of sodas. Today he brought in a quart of juice.
I'm just hoping that I'll have some like my sentences will make good sense.
I just expect someone to fall asleep during this episode, not because it's going to be boring, but because just also tired.
Yeah,
I don't know.
We ended up seeing the movie at midnight last night, 12:15. I thought I was gonna have it the worst, but Josh, you beat me out. We got out of the movie at about 2:30. I think I got to bed around 3, and I had to get up for work at 6:30 the next day. So I'm running about 3 hours.
Yeah, and then I just didn't sleep because that's what you do sometimes, I guess. I don't know. And I was pretty fine. I had to stay up, had to watch the Women's World Cup game and everything. There was too much to do today to go to sleep.
Plus, you're so hyped on that movie.
Hyped.
How could you sleep after seeing this movie?
There was no way to sleep. I think that you guys were just crazy, and just obviously you didn't like it as much as me. If you were able to sleep after the movie. But anyways, we're super happy that we get to talk about this. If you haven't seen it already, of course, go see the movie, as this episode will contain extreme heavy spoilers towards that. But first, if you haven't seen it yet, here's some things about the movie so that you can know a little bit about what you're getting into if you're going to go and see the movie. So it just barely came out on Tuesday, July 2nd. Before it came out in the United States, it already grossed $111 million in Asia just over the weekend, which is one of the biggest Superman or superhero grosses ever, internationally.
Do we know how much it cost to make?
I'm sure we do somewhere.
Let me look it up.
Have someone look it up. So it's already doing. I wasn't able to find an estimate, because it came out like literally today.
Yeah,
so we don't know
8 hours ago.
what it's doing. But I saw it was projected around 150-ish million for the first weekend here. So just like it's supposed to be. Big Marvel movie, doing really good.
Has a $160 million budget, so it's pretty much already caught up to what it was doing.
Exactly. So, and I mean, everywhere you look, great reviews, really good. And we're hoping to give you guys as well some good input, some things to think about if you've seen the movie, just so that you can dive a little bit deeper into it. And we're pretty excited to get into that. First, let's go into a little bit of other movie news. What else is coming out? What we've been seeing. And I, of course, am going to start with one of the largest things that's happening the entire year. Tomorrow night at midnight, Stranger Things season 3.
Ooh, is that
comes out on Netflix.
Dang, that came up fast.
It's so crazy, right? That it's already here. And so, I don't know.
About
I'm pretty
a month
pumped
ago, me and my wife talked about watching the whole series again, like watching season 1 and 2 leading up to it. I guess we won't be doing that.
You better just take the next day off and just
late.
They have if you want, they have a YouTube video that the cast did. It's like 14 minutes, I think.
That kind of sums up the last episode.
Sums the last 2 seasons. Because I rewatched them because I was watching it with a friend who had never seen them before, and I was surprised how much I had forgotten, about the seasons. But it's coming out. It's already also getting great reviews. It's already certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. Mm-hmm. Not going to let you down.
Fresh.
Check it out. Fresh.
Not surprised at all.
Exactly. So, super awesome.
Based off the final trailer, I am extremely hyped about it. So I was kind of a little bit skeptical about them doing a 3rd season because I thought the first one would have been fine as it was, right? And then the second one came out and it was really good. but I think that it was still overshadowed by the first season. But from what folks are saying,
I disagree, by the way. But
they're
continue.
like this second season was like the middle of the camel's humps, and now it's going to rise back up. So, I get your disagreement, but that's what I've heard. Okay, that's what I've heard.
No, it's all right. And I mean, if they say that, if it's going to be better than the second season, I am all in. Anyways, what else is new? What have you guys been watching?
I watched Jurassic Park with my wife the other night. We bought it in 4K, and it looks great. The 4K HDR. That movie was made in 92, I think it was, or something like that. Early 90s.
94.
94?
Yeah.
It still looks amazing, and with the 4K HDR, it looks great. That movie holds up to this day. Maybe one of these days we'll have to have a bonus episode of Best Movie Ever Made, in which Jurassic Park will win, unless you have bad taste in movies. So,
I was thinking Tremors was the greatest movie ever made, guys. I'm kidding. I'm sorry, but yeah, that would be tight. I haven't seen it in any of the updated versions. My parents still have the original VHS film, and I throw it in the cassette just to see it work, and it's pretty great.
So the thing is that sometimes I don't know if I could. I'm not saying that I wouldn't actually be able to. I just think it'd be weird to watch, some of those old movies I've grown up watching on VHS in a newer format. That happened. I watched Little Rascals, I think a little while ago, was on Netflix or something. And I watched it, and it was really weird not to see, the grainy lines and stuff across the screen, and the audio be higher quality.
Yeah. But this one holds up, man. Like even the CGI on the dinosaurs looks
Spectacular.
So anyway, I watched that, and then me and my wife actually started watching HBO's Euphoria.
Zendaya.
With Zendaya in it, and she's rising very quickly to one of my favorite new actresses. She after Spider-Man and watching her in Euphoria, she's great. So just with Euphoria, it's very mature, not for everybody, but it's one of those shows that you can't really look away from, if that makes sense at all.
Keeps you involved. It keeps your mind active on the show.
But at the same time, you're terrified of because it's it's a high school drama, and it's everything that can go wrong goes wrong within those episodes. Lots of fights, lots of backstabbing, but I don't know. It's just watch a trailer. It's an interesting show.
Awesome. Very good.
I like the sound of that. I have been on kind of a thriller/horror film kick recently. My wife and I went and watched Annabelle Comes Home. I enjoyed that movie. I really like the Conjuring series, and I think I've mentioned this before. I like horror films. But there were a couple of dinguses who sat in the front of the theater and went, "Oh," or "she's hot," and did all that kind of theater shenanigans the whole time. And really if I had a right arm, I would have ripped it off and beat them with it had I had the gumption or the balls or anything to do that with.
Side note, on the Instagram, I posted that pull quote from you that's I can't remember, I think it's for the Spider-Man. You're I give this movie 2 thumbs up, which is really hard for me to do, but sometimes I can manage it. And when I first heard you say that in the podcast, it just completely went over my head.
Yeah.
When I pulled the quote, I'm oh my gosh, he's got 1 arm. He can't do 2. And then I told Paige, my little sister, about it. I read her the quote, and she didn't think anything of it too. I'm it's funny because he's got 1 arm, and she just lost it.
So I guess it's kind of like an inside joke because you're not staring at us in the face, or you don't really probably not everyone knows who we are. But yeah, I'm this crazy 1-arm guy, a little bit nuts, But all the time I will make probably inside jokes that only I and the 3 people in this room know about. But yeah, so that was kind of a really hard thing for me. And I love going to the theater, and I love enjoying a good film, but I hate when other moviegoers ruin the whole experience for you. So yeah, I watched Annabelle Comes Home. I thought it was good. I actually would like to purchase it because, like I said, I'm a fan of the Conjuring series.
Was it better than the other 2? Because this is the 3rd Annabelle, right?
Yeah, so they've done the Annabelle
Homecoming.
Creation.
Annabelle Creation,
Far From
Annabelle
Home.
and then Annabelle. So Annabelle is the new Spider-Man, guys. By the way, they blended the genres really well. Genres, or however you say it. And so yeah, now it's Annabelle Man. I don't know, but no, I would say it is my favorite of them. I just thought it was a good, close to home thriller. Yeah, so if anyone wants to go watch that, most
Because it
definitely would
mostly,
recommend it.
and correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't it mostly take place in their house
It does take place in
with
the
all of
Warrens'
the stuff
home.
that they have going on there?
Yeah,
Cool.
from their creepy room. So yeah, that's a good recommendation on my part. And so yeah, that would be my highlight of the week of what I watched. So
Awesome.
recommend it.
Definitely. And then just super quick for me, because I know that you guys aren't here for this. You guys are here for the Spider-Man, of course. I watched Toy Story 4 with my wife about a week-ish ago, and it was good. I definitely have been one to hype up Toy Story 4 before I saw it, and I will still say that you should go see it. It is a good movie. It did not exceed my expectations, though.
Bummer.
It did not meet my expectations, even. So,
Really?
So it was sad. Because here's the thing: is that I feel bad saying that because people are going to be like, "Oh, it was not good." It was good. Okay. Pixar makes good movies. They made a good movie. The story did not have to be told, but they don't damage the franchise by making it. That's all I'll say. It was good. It's, especially if you have kids, take your kids to see it. They'll love it. Super good. And that's that. All right.
Cool. I'll see it when it comes out on
Yeah.
Blu-ray.
Whenever, comes out.
Yep. I'll see it eventually. Who knows when, but eventually I got, it's a Pixar movie, so you got
12 years from now, Vince's firstborn wants to watch it. He will finally
We're
watch
starting
it.
with number 4 and working backwards.
Sorry. No, getting into this film a little bit, guys, I'm really overexcited to talk about it, so I really want to cut to... What was your first impression of this film? Like, when we got in there and within the first 5 minutes, how did you feel about the way they had it set up?
I didn't like the first 5 minutes, and that's one of the only nitpicks that I have, is that the first scene, we're talking...
Spider-Man.
So the very first scene, I mean, I get that they had to introduce Mysterio and show that, Nick Fury was going to be it and everything. I just felt that it was extremely out of place because they have the big potato leads where it shows, something and it tries to give you a little bit of what's going to happen in the story. I just felt like it happened and it didn't really give us much other than what we already know is that Mysterio is going to be in this and Nick Fury is going to be in this, and then it leaves.
Yeah.
So that was just me. I loved this movie so much, and you'll hear me rave about it the whole podcast. So this is one of the only nitpicks that I had.
I like that we're starting this off on a negative note, so we can go up from here.
But what did you think about the saxophone over the Marvel logo?
I liked that.
That was a nice little change, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Kind of filled into that. I thought it was cool. To start, I want to talk about... So are we going straight into spoilers here, or are we talking about just our overall thoughts first off?
You have full ability to, spoilers, guys. Josh already said spoilers.
I'll just
but
before we go into spoilers, I'll just say this movie is great. It is a good Spider-Man movie. It is a great Marvel Universe movie because it really does move the story along. Go see it for sure. This is going to be one you want to see. It's going to be one that I rewatch multiple times. It's probably up there top. We have so many Marvel movies now, so I don't know, top 5, top 10. It's up there in the high end of the Marvel movies for me. So if you guys want to hurry and give your overall impressions on it, and then we'll jump right into the spoiler stuff.
Okay. I loved it. I thought that the film was very well created. I thought the story moved well, and you were able to attach yourself to folks within the movie, right? You were able to kind of put yourself in the situation. Like I've said in other Spider-Man discussions, right? I felt like I was in high school again in some parts, and there were other parts where I was like, oh gosh, it got a little bit of awkward sweat for you at the same time. But I love the movie. I love the extended story, and I hope for a bigger, picture story coming from it, right? And yeah, that's my impression. So just the same, 2 thumbs up from me.
Did it again
There it
somehow.
is.
Just sneaking it in all I can.
Exactly. I have the exact same thoughts, that it was very good. And if you love the Marvel Universe, you're not going to be disappointed. You're going to go see it. You're going to enjoy it. It was very smartly made. One of my biggest things I was looking for is that they dealt with the after effects of Endgame in a reasonable and logical way. And I'm sure we'll talk about it, but they did. And they did it in a very good way. And like Casey said, it really felt like high school. It didn't feel like watching a 30-year-old man interact with a bunch of high school students.
Yeah. Yep.
So 2 thumbs up for me, maybe 3, since Casey can do 2, I can do 3.
We can just all add extra arms. Okay.
Use your big toes.
Awesome. So there's our initial impressions. If you don't want to hear spoilers, stop now, go see the movie, come back and jump in, because we're just going to talk spoilers Endgame. We're going to talk spoilers Spider-Man. No holding back from here on out.
We can go full circle in this podcast. We can do the whole thing.
Yeah.
Everything. Nothing will be swept under the rug. It'll be all known.
Yeah. So the spoilers from here on out. Okay. So the first thing that I want to talk about is kind of the marketing for this movie. They presented the movie as if Mysterio came here from another dimension. I think he said, was it the 616 dimension? Doesn't matter. I can't remember exactly which one.
Yes.
And that there are these 4 elemental monsters that destroyed his world, and he's here to save it, right? So we go into this movie thinking that we're going to get into a multiverse, just like what they did with Spider-Verse. There was a line in the movie that was super meta that Quentin Beck, Mysterio, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, says. And this is me paraphrasing. I don't remember exactly what he says. But it's something along the lines of, sorry, guys. We're at the point where people will believe in other dimensions and monsters. Yeah, that's all I wrote down. So I can't remember exactly how he put it. So it's something along the lines of like, after Thanos' attack, after all the aliens have come down to Earth, the Earth is to a point where we are willing to believe anything. One of the teachers is constantly running around talking about it's witches. Witches are doing this.
Yeah.
So it's such a meta thing for us as a Marvel viewers, right? When this series started, it was Iron Man 1, and it was the most grounded superhero movie, I think, that had been released up to date. Maybe Batman came out around the same time, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, it was one of the most grounded movies. Iron Man's tech was all believable. And then 10 years later, we're doing nanotech. We're doing people with spider powers. We're doing purple aliens coming down from the sky. How did we get from the point where we are only willing to suspend our disbelief for a man in an iron suit to getting to the point where, we're in other dimensions. There's elementals running around. It's like they built over the 10 years us up as an audience and prepared us for this. Each moment moves us a little bit farther. I just thought that was really cool. What do you guys think?
Witches, man. No, I think that's kind of curious because I remember when, Iron Man came out, speaking of and going back to, how cool it was to see exactly how he had built his tech, right? Mm-hmm. The 3D tech the 3D imaging that he used to create like the gloves and the boots, and he looked into it, and then he's down like in a car garage, like albeit or whatever you want to say, a gigantic full of crazy amounts of technology and money garage, but it's still just like if I were to want to go build something, I could go do it in my garage, and that's where we're at. And now, because we live, I think this is where I'm getting at. Sorry. Because we live in a world where in 2008, the internet, I would say, is still pretty fresh on people's minds. Like, not everyone had like full access to internet. And I say that, and a lot of people might be like, wait, no, everyone had it, but not everyone had like it at every inch of their hand, right? Not everyone had iPhones, not everyone had a smartphone, and not everyone had, the easy access to it. And Elon Musk wasn't sharing, open sourcing his tech, right? And now we live in a world where so much of tech is open source, so much of that's given, that Marvel is kind of, taking advantage of that in order to get us to believe there's, purple men out there in the universe that might come down and get us, or, whatever it is. I think that it's all come to head because of the way that our regular technology has advanced in a way too. Mm-hmm. I don't know. That's just my thoughts.
There's like, not, this isn't religious, but like that scripture or whatever in the Bible that's like the devil like leads people away like little by little. I feel like that's like what Marvel's done, because I never realized until Vince said until now that they've done this, that they started with something so believable and just worked until we've gotten to this point. Because I think that it would not have been a success if from the beginning someone came and they said, hey man, like, we're going to do this big purple alien dude named Thanos. He's going to have these like 6 stones in the universe, and they're going to be able to time travel and all this other stuff that happens in Endgame and all these other things. And everyone would look at him and they'd be like, that's just too far-fetched, man. Like,
the general public is not going to go for
they're
that.
not going to go for that. They're not going to relate to that. Like, it's just going to be too much for superheroes. But I mean, here we are, right? And so it's just that. Yeah, go ahead.
And I think that's why this movie works so well, because we are in the shoes of Peter Parker, who is willing to believe anything that Quentin anything
Beck.
that Mysterio tells him. He's seen aliens. He's seen that, he's been to space. Someone comes in and says, hey, I'm from a different dimension. He's like, yeah, cool. And we as an audience did the same thing. Someone comes in after we see this movie Endgame. Someone comes in and says, I'm from a different dimension. And we're like, as an audience, yeah, cool. We're in. We trust you. And that's why that's why it worked. Like, at what point did Marvel decide that this is the direction they were going, to make Mysterio work so well, to make us trust this character who we know, everyone who knows Spider-Man, a little bit of Spider-Man's rogue gallery, knows that Mysterio is a bad guy. Yet all of us were willing to come in and be like, no, we'll trust him. If he says he's from another dimension, even though we know better, we'll still trust him.
Exactly. I think that we trust them because, I mean, obviously the movie sets us up to, but also because that is, like you said, that's where the world is going for there. And even if the characters themselves don't know it, it's like, what's really going on? Because, I mean, it's my favorite. You said something that jogged it in my memory. I think it's my favorite one-liner from the whole movie when, Nick Fury is trying to get, Spider-Man to come and help them with the problems that they're having with the, elementals. And he's like, hey man, like, I don't want to do this. I'm just a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He's like, bitch, please, you've been to space.
Yeah, I've been to space.
So like, the thing is that was really funny and I really love that line, but it's also so true. Like, there's nothing that's just a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. There's nothing anymore in the Marvel universe that's just low key. It's all big and beyond everything that we've seen before.
Well, kind of as it's grown, right? Like, correct me if I'm wrong. We get Iron Man, right? And then we get a couple Iron Man villains. And we get Thor, I believe, comes out. And then Captain America. And it just kind of builds up, right? And so the world has been introduced to the goal, like their world has been introduced to the goal of Marvel to introduce these characters, right? Little by little. And so to the point where people, like you said, they believe in anything. So that makes me wonder, what type of, and this breaks into a little bit more spoiler territory, right? But the illusions that their tech is able to do, right? Mysterio can do. What else is an illusion throughout this film, and what's setting us up? Like, what if really more of the world was destroyed because they were, playing a little bit of a shadow war or something? I don't know. I don't know. I just want to know more about everything.
Yeah. So anyway, I just thought that was a really cool, like, meta thing that they stuck in there that just got my brain working. And it makes me respect Kevin Feige and the creators of the Marvel Universe even more than I did. Like, they have this series so perfect that let's jump into the kind of the character. Let's jump into the scenes of the movies, right? The movie starts up, and Josh, I've been looking forward to hear your thoughts on the effects of what they're calling the blip now, which is the effects of the snap, people leaving and coming back. You were saying a couple episodes back that you thought that if they didn't handle this right, it could be a very missed opportunity. Do you feel like that they were able to nail that, to explain it enough for you?
So I wouldn't go as far to say nail it, but yes, I feel like they, did it in a good way. They have like the whole section at the beginning where they have like their little school news report, right?
Which, thank goodness they brought that back in. That was so funny.
Where they're talking about it. And so, yeah, that was really funny. And while it did answer a lot of questions, it did also leave other questions open for debate. For example, you have, you showed, and it was super funny. Like, I laughed out loud. It showed, them at the school, the marching band's playing on the basketball court, and they disappear. And then it shows them appear again, right, with the blip later, and they're playing basketball, and they, like, run over some kids and stuff because they just reappear there. So, like, but what happens to all the people who are on airplanes and trains and stuff like that? Like,
they dead?
That's such a cold thought right there. Thanos in the house.
Okay, I'm gonna try to answer this. You know how Bruce Banner, when he did the snap, he attempted to bring Natalie back, Black Widow. What if he had some sort of control over it? Like, if he could, like, target that one specific person in his mind, like, what if he had the ability to be like, I'm going to snap everybody back in a safe way. And so all those people who are in danger were able to go somewhere else? Is that stretching too much for you?
I'm not trying to take this to a dark place and say, like, the thousands and thousands of people who are on some sort of domestic flight suddenly died. I'm just saying that there's not really... Because, I mean, obviously, like you said, he did have some sort of control because, he couldn't just snap. They're like, you're willing this to happen. But just, I mean, I just think that's too far-fetched to say that he could, like, think about, like, every person and be like, they all come back safe and stuff like that. But then again, he is able to somehow, just by snapping his fingers, bring back every single person that was gone, and he doesn't know them. So
I don't necessarily think that they were just, landed on the runway, right? But I do think that, for instance, if you were... Oh, man, I just realized where this thought went because those people would have appeared. No, I think actually, sorry, hold on here. I think those people probably ended up in the airplanes that they were originally on, right? Those airplanes probably continued. There probably were some pilots that blipped and those planes crashed. But if, for instance, you blipped and the airplane you were on at one time is now on the ground, you're just going to blip into the airplane, right? Or onto the train. And so probably somebody sat on somebody's lap at one time and it was a little uncomfortable, but people came back.
Well,
but they're not dead, so it's okay.
No, May had a line in there too that I just remembered when they're at the charity event, and she says that when she blipped back into her apartment, someone else was living there, and the lady was like freaked out, and she had to explain, like, no, I'm from here. I just, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what you're doing in my house, but... So there had to have been, and then like you said, the basketball scene, there had to have been those kind of moments where like people are falling on top of each other. Half the world just appeared back,
So that's just like one little thing that I was thinking about as like a what if situation, but like they can't, solve every single thing. Mm-hmm. Overall, I think they did a really good job. I mean, talking about it, like, I mean, there was, what's his face, the one teacher... He talked about how his wife pretended to blip, and so she just so sad. But like, like things like that, did happen, and they, brought that up. They didn't just turn a blind eye to it. They said, hey, these things happened.
And they even had a student that they kind of brought along with them that was 5 years older.
Exactly, 5 years older and buffer and everything like that. So yeah, so like I always feel, just because it was something I focused on before, I'm not saying that it would have made the movie a lot better. In my mind, I think they could have done more with it, but for me, I'm satisfied they did enough to not simply ignore the effects of this huge catastrophic event that occurred. So I'm satisfied, I'll say that.
Yeah, I agree. I honestly didn't expect them to go super far into it. It's kind of, if you read comic books, they do these kind of event stories like these movies are built the same that they build comics, and the event stories always throw a wrench in the stories you're currently reading. And so, like, if you're reading a Spider-Man book, they have a giant Avengers event, and then they have to go back to where Spider-Man was before this event and kind of explain it away. They kind of did it the same way for this movie, where they recognized it, they played with it a little bit, and now in the next one we can kind of move on. So it's kind of the Marvel pattern, where the consequences aren't as big, as important, because they can kind of brush them off to the side and move on to the next one. It's kind of disappointing, but I think they pulled it off fairly well.
I just think about they did so many things really cleverly. Like the one part when they were getting on the plane to go, and you had Flash up there, and he was like ordering a drink, but he was being annoying. So then MJ was like, "Ma'am, he blipped, so he's actually 16, not 21." So yeah, so just a lot of smart things there. Mm-hmm. Anyways, you guys, anything else about the blip, or do we want to move on to another scene?
I want to talk about that teacher, since you brought him up.
Yes.
I thought he was so funny in this movie.
The witches one or the beard one?
The other one.
Oh yeah, he's great.
I got his name right here. Sorry.
Because he really is. I mean, like, I remember him. I'm sure I'll remember once we start talking about him a lot of the things that he said, but he really is just so hilarious.
So the actor's name is Martin Starr. Originally, I saw him in Freaks and Geeks. He's in Silicon Valley. He's a great actor. He was really good in the first one, and then he just did absolutely fantastic in this one. This bumbling kind of fool of a teacher who's just trying his best to get this school activity, and he's kind of the one that kind of moves the students along from scene to scene and gets Peter to the places that he needs to be. We find out later that it's S.H.I.E.L.D. behind it all that's given him these free vacations and stuff, but he played the comic relief so well for me in this. And I feel so bad for him and the stuff that he continually has to go through over and over and over again. So he really stands out for me in this movie. But I also think that the relationship with Peter and Mary Jane, or sorry, that's not her name in this, Peter and Michelle, are some of the best kind of low-key moments in the movie. One of my biggest nitpicks with the last one was I didn't really love MJ. I felt like she didn't really have a lot to say. She just kind of was. What was the word that you used last time? She was a nihilist. She's a nihilist.
So yeah. I think I agree with you. I think they found the middle ground where she still stayed within her, her character that they originally meant her to be. This person who's a nihilist, who's a little bit different, and she's awkward and all these things. They found, I'd say the awkwardness and everything like that. They found the middle ground because when she opens up to Peter and all these different things, it's awkward and it's weird, but it's more her, and she's not as much just like this controlling person who you would like almost never want to talk to or be around. And they played it off really well. And plus that awkwardness was just so perfect for feeling like you're in high school and not, in a movie about high school.
Well, they kind of think about like when Peter is describing all of his plan, right, for the trip. The plan, where he wants to, take and go to all these places with her. He wants to pick up a specific necklace, a Black Dahlia, something or another, because it reminds her of the Black Dahlia murder. And they go to different places based around, I don't know, he has these ideas based around the weird creepiness that is MJ. And I think that brings a little bit more of reality into it. It makes it a little bit more fun because we all can remember that one person in that one couple in high school who one of them was just, or even today, right, at our age with other married couples, there's just that one person within the relationship sometimes who's just, they're weird. They like to go do weird things, and their hobbies revolve around just slightly different things than you or I would ever, go to. And so I thought that made this relationship extra relatable. Is because, it's weird. I'm weird. Happens sometimes,
And Tom Holland and Zendaya played it so well. I thought that Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield's relationship in The Amazing Spider-Man was so well. Go to find out they were actually dating at the time of filming. Found out today, Tom Holland, Zendaya are actually dating in real life now.
No way.
Yeah.
What?
So I don't know if this is a pattern for the Spider-Man series, but I think that's why this relationship is so believable, because they're so comfortable around each other. And the things that, like, every moment they have together, like you said, Casey, reminds you of high school.
Yeah.
I was that awkward kid. I remember those moments sitting next to the girl that I like and kind of reaching over and touching her with the pinky and hoping that she'll hold your hand, or like
the shoulder in the Spider-Verse. Hey.
Yeah. Hey. And the awkward kiss at the end of this movie where she just kind of leans in and pecks him. I had that kiss in high school where I didn't know what to do, so I just leaned in and pecked her.
It's so
and it was
real.
the most awkward thing in the world, you know. But this relationship that they built between these two are so believable, and both MJ and Peter Parker, their characters they show so much more kind of this like you said, this awkward but kind of open, tender.
cute.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was what I thought, not in like a totally sappy way. I thought it was cute and awkward and relatable, and that's why I liked it. I think that's why people like it.
And at the same time, like MJ, like in some of these past superhero movies, especially in like the original Raimi trilogy, MJ's always been kind of this damsel in distress. But they made MJ in this one kind of a stronger woman, and she runs into danger. She runs to help Peter. She runs to help him out. And I don't know. I just think they did such a good job of, like you said, Josh, just making her more likable, giving her more to do in the movie. And she's just great.
I think too that going into where she like runs into danger, and she's more of a participant in the relationship and less of an accessory to the relationship in this one. And I like that. I think that there are very few people who would want to or can relate to today's dating scene or understand it that really have just someone who is an accessory to a relationship who's just a piece anymore, right? Everyone's involved in some way. Like someone wants to be, going or to and fro with other people. So I thought that was good. But going into the thought of, relationships and kind of the weird relationships that happen, what did you think about the relationship between Happy and Peter Parker's Aunt May?
I just would want to know what would happen if Tony Stark knew. Because he was always about that. One of the most awkward but hilarious lines from the first one, right, is when they're making that video and he's like, "Hi, May, how you doing? What are you wearing? Something skimpy?" And then it's like, "Oh no."
Happy wouldn't have had a chance with her if Tony was still around. He would have stepped right in.
Exactly. So I don't know. Well, because at first when I saw it, I think even now I'm still a little bit off put by it. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that I was not expecting it and didn't really see how it came about, other than just, Peter being involved with the Avengers and Happy having to be around for that. I mean, like, I thought that, they did well together for the little bit of time, and it added, some comedic relief at times, but I don't know. For me, it was a little bit strange, but nothing that, takes away from the movie at all.
Yeah. No, this version of Aunt May is just so much different than anything we've seen, and to kind of get that idea of the little old lady Aunt May out of your head it's really hard to do. It's one of those things that's ingrained and just like pushed for so many years. Having this realistic young version is so much different. I liked the relationship. I'm really happy it ended at the end because it just wouldn't have worked. But it made, like you said, it made for some great funny moments. I'm glad that Aunt May is not so like depressed from the death of her husband that she's not moving on and living her life. And I thought it was good. It's fun to see a different version. It's just kind of hard to wrap your mind around.
Yeah. I felt the same way. I thought, this would never happen in any of the former movies that have been made about this. And so it was enjoyable. It was good. And I thought, like you said, it brought out good comic relief when we needed it. And at the end when, Peter sits down, so guys, explain to me what's going on here, right? Like, and it's kind of like, that's where we know, okay, this was just a summer fling, right? It's kind of what Aunt May says it was.
And so we've talked about the comic relief a little bit. I brought it up and we talked about this being it. And obviously when you go to a Marvel movie, of course, you expect there to be funny moments. How do you guys think that this didn't live up to the expectation of that? For me personally, while you guys think about that, I thought that this was one of the funniest movies that Marvel has made, as far as the amount of comedy, that they're able to string in throughout all the action, which I mean is, it's textbook Marvel. It's what they do all the time. I just found myself laughing out loud almost more than any other movie that they've made.
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious. But it's also different, like, compared to some of them. I'm going to use Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 as an example. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, I liked it, but I felt like the jokes were forced upon me over and over and over again. It was like every line delivered in that movie was a joke. Everyone had their funny moment, and after a while, it's just like, I'm tired of every like all these jokes. In this movie, it was more the situation was funny. They did have jokes, but the situations were funny. The way, and I like that so much better. Like, I love the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, especially the first one. But I don't know, sometimes Marvel's humor is a little too much. Like, oh, we need to, it's a really serious moment. We need to lighten the mood. Throw a joke in there. Mm-hmm. This one feels a little more casual about it.
You talk about that situational humor, and I want to relate it to the Blip a little bit, right? Because we talked about, there was one point where on the airplane, the one guy's getting drinks in first class or business class or whatever, right? And they're like, oh, he's really 16, not 21. And then there are other things that were funny because of the situation. So going a little bit into, the progress of the movie, right? Where they first arrive in Venice, and the first thing they show up to is this really dumpy hostel hotel, right? Where he's like, oh, they must be renovating it or something. And then they go in there and there's water in the hotel. And then later in the day, they arrive at the museum, right? And they're like, it's closed till September. Didn't you check the website? And that's funny because think about how many times you've been traveling somewhere and you're like, we really want to hit this up. You get there, neither of you or any of you who are traveling, right? Nobody checked to see if it was actually open when you were going to arrive. And so just kind of going forward with that too, I agree. I didn't feel like the humor was forced in there. I just think the humor, and I always say this, is relatable. I like to relate movies to me, guys. So for me, I loved how real it was, because there have been many times where I've had really awkward moments going and doing and just being alive, right? And it's a good chuckle for a minute. Like one time, and I use this as an example all the time, when after my wife and I had been married for like 1.5 years, 2 years, the car I drove literally lit on fire and like smoke came billowing out of the hood. And my wife was like bursting into tears and crying. And I was laughing. And my wife was so mad, but that was how I was reacting to the situation, because I was at a moment of like, what else could go wrong? And I felt that was sometimes, it wasn't like, and I say this and, I wasn't in like a terrible state of mind. It was just kind of funny. It was like the day, it was funny because of the situation. And that's how the movie kind of felt to me a lot of times. Like nothing forced, just situational humor.
Mm-hmm. And they did really well at also balancing it with kind of real moments. Like Tony's death. That was hanging over the entire movie. Peter, his change from Spider-Man Homecoming to this one is pretty drastic. Like in Homecoming, he was so excited to be Spider-Man. He wanted nothing more to get out of school, run around, be an Avenger, drop out, help people, move into the building with them. And then we have the events of Endgame. He comes back, all of his friends get Blip back, and now he's tired of it. He wants a break. He just wants to go on a trip with his friends. And throughout this movie, like I feel like this one, even more than Homecoming, you see that divide in Peter, where he just wants so bad to stop being Spider-Man, just for a couple weeks to hang out with his friend, to flirt with his girlfriend, to be a normal person. But everyone around him is saying, no, great power, great responsibility. You're going to have to step up because we think you're going to be the next Tony Stark. You're going to be the next leader of the Avengers. You're going to be even Tony thinks that you thought before he died, you're going to be the next person to step up. And it's cool to see that character development. I really think that Marvel, Kevin Feige, has a plan for Peter Parker to go from this young kid to learn kind of how to be an adult, kind of like Tony had his big transformation, going from this billionaire, philanthropist, playboy, to the Tony Stark that we get in Endgame, who is willing to sacrifice himself for the greater good. You know, I think we're going to get that change in Peter, and just between these 2 or 3 movies, you can kind of already see it happening. He's no longer that bright-eyed kid who just wants to go out and save the day. He's really realizing that there's more. There's consequences to the responsibilities that he has, and he doesn't know if he's ready to step up into that.
Yeah, going off of that right there, Peter does not want to step up. And this is where we get into Mysterio a little bit. And I kind of want to pivot a little bit from here into Mysterio's character and kind of some of his things, if you guys are cool with that.
Yeah.
But Peter, like, goes up and has the first kind of interactions with these elementals, with Mysterio. And then Mysterio says, hey, you know, you need some relief. Let's go and get a drink. And he's like, well, I'm not old enough to drink, right? And so he has, like, water or something, or lemonade, right? And Peter just kind of vents and unloads on Mysterio and just says, I don't want to do this. And at this point, he's been given a pair of glasses that control a huge amount of Stark tech that's just floating and orbiting over the Earth. You hand it over to a 16-year-old kid. They're these retro, goofy-looking Tony Stark-style sunglasses that no one else could pull off. And he doesn't want it, right? He doesn't want it at all. And so this is where he, in point, says he misinterprets Tony's message, right? Where he says, to the next Iron Man, you know, you choose and go from here. And I think also with that, there is a point where it's not choosing to be Iron Man, it's choosing to lead like Iron Man, or choosing to develop others, similar to what Tony Stark was able to do. And he hands off that power to a stranger. And that's a good, I don't know, that's a good thought that I had. I don't necessarily know if it's good to anyone else, but that was something I thought about last night during the film or afterwards.
Well, like what Happy said, you know, near the end of the film, not to move too far away from Mysterio, but, you know, and it's in the trailer and everything. Like, I don't think he would have done what he did had he not known that you would have been around afterwards, you know, to clean up. So, yeah, that's definitely really, really huge as we talk about the whole character arc for Peter Parker and Mysterio and, you know, everything that went down in the movie. It's brilliant.
So you bring up the bar scene. In my opinion, this movie has been good up to the bar scene. You get to the bar scene, the movie becomes great. Peter has this heart-to-heart with Mysterio. He's able to confide in him. He has someone that he can relate to. He can talk superhero stuff to. He gives him the glasses, leaves the bar to go hang out with this girl. Finally, things are looking up for him. He feels like he's passed on this responsibility and this weight is lifted. And throughout the movie, I love Jake Gyllenhaal. He is so good in this. And throughout the entire movie, like I said earlier, I've known, you know, this is the curse of being a comic book fan or a Spider-Man animated series fan, is you know the characters before you see what they do with them in the movie. Mm-hmm. So through the whole thing, I've, just like Peter, have grown to love this character, Quentin Beck. And I'm saying to myself in my head as I'm watching the scene, please don't be a bad guy. Please don't do what I think you're going to do and I expect you to do. Sure enough, they did it, and I was kind of like disappointed at first. Yeah. I was like, oh, this is what you're going to do with the movie? This is the direction you're going to go? The obvious way? But Jake Gyllenhaal, the amazing actor that he did, and the way that he played Quentin Beck, and the movie producers and the story writers, the way they decided to steer this story, it's just got so much better. The movie just takes off. Mm-hmm. And Quentin goes in. Do you want to explain kind of where it kind of goes from there? You're better at explaining the plot than I am. Because this scene, just like him, the way that he explains like what is actually going on was so well done.
Did you guys like that scene?
I loved it.
I liked the direction that it took from that scene. I did not like the writing of that scene.
You like the toasts.
What happened. And it's not so much about what happened so much as it was just, you know, like obviously, you know, at this point we're going to move in a different direction and Mysterio is going to be the bad guy. But Marvel has a way of, you know, giving you the plot through its story, you know, and telling them, whereas this was, hey, I'm going to give a monologue so that you understand what's about to happen. Mm-hmm. That's one of my only other nitpicks of the movie that I was going to mention. And so you brought it up. I thought I'd mention it. I agree with you that the movie got better from that point, and that the scene and what happens in the scene is amazing, and it turns the movie to a better thing. Because I mean, could you imagine if it was just the elementals?
Oh, it
like,
would've been bad.
how lame that would have been.
That would've been
He
way
beats
lame.
the fire. Yay!
Yeah.
Amen.
Well, kind of going back to where we're talking about this scene in particular. So they're sitting in here, and there's Peter Parker and oh gosh, what's his name right now? Jake Gyllenhaal's character,
Quentin Beck.
Quentin Beck, right? And as
We can
soon,
just call him Beck from now on.
Beck
Or Mysterio. Whatever.
Beck Mysterio. This guy, Jake Gyllenhaal, he looks really good with the beard. I just want to compliment
does.
and toast that.
He's a good looking guy.
But what I think is something that we can play forward from the first movie, right? The Spider-Man, Homecoming. Who's our bad guy there, right? He is somebody who had a contract with the city that Stark Industries and the American government kind of stepped in and walked over. Then, because of necessity, that guy and his crew becomes the villains of the show. But then let's look into this second film. As soon as Peter Parker hands over the glasses, and he confirms and gives the key essentially to Beck and says, you're in control of this massive tool, right? Then we get out there, and there's this illusion that's happened. This whole thing has been an illusion for Peter Parker, where Beck becomes known as kind of this fraud. He's not really this interdimensional being, right? He's just a disgruntled Stark employee. But think about it. Tony Stark being the guy who evolved from the billionaire playboy philanthropist, right, to the guy he was, along the way there had to have been some falling out. Mm-hmm. And we saw that throughout a couple of the films, and they kind of played that back as they introduced most of these characters. And so it plays, and I don't know, onto the fact that Tony had his demons in life, and now in death, he also has his demons that are now going to be affecting the world, and people who are trying to step up and be the next Tony Stark who are not worthy of the mantle of taking that over. And so at this scene, essentially, here comes Beck, and he just does all these toasts to each individual person and kind of relays their backstory. And it's like, and we're going to take care of this, and we're going to take over, because the world will believe in anything at this point. So we're going to make them. He's a great storyteller, a marketing genius, right? And he's like, I'm going to make them see what I want them to see, and they're going to believe what I want them to believe. Nothing more, nothing less. And we see that played through in some of the fights, where the drones that are, and this is something we're going to get into a little bit more probably too here, where the drones stop working, and he's like, no, kill all the drones, and let's relaunch the thing. He's going to get it done. And then even after, at the very end, and I'm not going to spoil this yet, we see what his storytelling ability has been able to do. And so Quentin Beck, for all rights and purposes, is a genius. He is a genius storyteller. He is the Steve Jobs of storytelling in this film. But really, it was great. And that this is kind of where we pivot into a bit more about the film, I think. But really, that's my take in this section.
Shout out to whoever named the glasses really quick. Edith. Even dead, I'm the hero.
So good.
I laugh so hard.
Thank you for covering that.
Yeah.
I think the reason that I liked that scene was, it was a lot of exposition, but it's the way it delivered what was actually going on in a really quick and easy way to understand. And it also tied in all the past movies again, even to other cast, like side cast members, like the random guy who Obadiah Stane yells at in Iron Man 1 is there, who's this spurned employee that
Tony Stark built this in a cave.
Yeah, and he's just like, he's seen, he like you said, he's like Toombs. He's tired of these superheroes who think they run the world, and he's like, they don't deserve this. Like, we deserve a part of this too. And so Mysterio puts this little gang together, this perfect little gang, and comes up with this big plan to become the world's new hero.
Yeah.
And he's so smart about it that he's able to even trick who we think is Nick Fury.
Oh, gosh. Big spoiler ahead. Nick Fury isn't really in this film.
But I want to talk a little bit about Mysterio himself before we talked about his drones. Mm-hmm. Mysterio, again, call back to the Homecoming episode. Costume designers for the Marvel Universe are freaking geniuses. They are so good at what they do. They took the fishbowl-headed man.
Dilly.
They took the fishbowl-headed man, and not only did they incorporate that into his like fancy-looking Thor ripoff costume, looks like with Doctor Strange powers, but when you get down to what he's actually doing, he's in his stupid little gray spandex suit, and he still has a version of the fishbowl on his head that's actually like a computer monitor, so he can look around and see exactly what's going on at any angle, or it has like computer code going on.
Well, it's so smart because those are literally the suits that they wear to film these movies when they're doing it. Like Josh Brolin and Mark Ruffalo, they wear that suit. I saw that and I was like, that is genius, because that's literally what he's doing.
They saved on some budget there, guys.
I was thinking that too. Like, I can't remember which one of the cast members. I think it was Mark Ruffalo who said that he was like kind of disappointed that everybody. I mean, this isn't an exact quote or anything, but he's like everyone comes in with these cool costumes, and I come in with a gray jumpsuit. I mean, look, poor Jake Gyllenhaal. He comes in a gray jumpsuit, and they still show him in a gray jumpsuit. He doesn't get to become a giant green man. He's just this regular dude with a fishbowl on his head.
Well, and that plays in, though, so much to the illusion or the mysteriousness of his character and kind of what he does. Because he's always, they're commanding drones and they're just creating illusion.
And so, call back to the animated series again.
Yes.
I grew up on the animated series. Mysterio's hologram devices that he used to use looked like little tiny dice. And he would go into a room and he'd throw the dice on the ground and it would turn the entire building into an illusion, to a jungle or something. Very unrealistic. So the way that they incorporated these drones into the movie and how they fly around invisibly and follow the person around, projecting this illusion and tricking them into believing that they're somewhere that they're not, was really, really cool. Like, it's really creative what they came up with in order to make Mysterio a believable, grounded person who isn't from another dimension. He's just a regular guy who understands how to manipulate people.
Yeah. Favorite scene of the movie is definitely that for me. When we talk about, I mean, if you guys are cool to talk about that, the scenes where Peter Parker is, being tricked by Mysterio, and he's. Are we good to talk about that?
I want to talk about this.
Okay,
so
for sure.
Bad.
Just want to make sure.
Yes, please dive in.
I'm just waiting for you to finish your conversation so I can hype it up.
So Vince is going to get you even more hyped
sentence.
because I know that he was paying way closer
This is my
attention
job.
to me.
I've noticed listening to our past podcasts, my job here is not to provide like interesting points. It's just for the hype.
Vince is the hype man of the Pause, Rewind, Play podcast. It's true. But it was just so interesting because Peter Parker is there and he's completely confused because he thinks he's someplace he doesn't know. I mean, even later when he meets Happy, right, in Holland, he doesn't even know then if that's true. Mm-hmm. So when he's in this place where he's being completely tricked by Mysterio and seeing all of these illusions, he's still in the real world, right? And so you see him like bumping into things and breaking things that you can't actually see. And so you, as an audience member, you're supposed to feel like he does. Like, even though it's beautiful, like the visual effects, you feel confused and you feel disoriented because he's literally like walking through a corridor, but then he bumps into a wall that's not there. Cool. And so it's so interesting because you see one thing, but you feel another, which is quite literally what Peter's going through. Hit the hype. Go.
This is the reason to see this movie. It's only 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes scene, tops. It's the reason to see the movie. The drones come in, his world becomes whatever Quentin Beck wants him to see. And like you said, the fighting, the choreography in the movie is super cool. And then the way that he tricks him, because he knows he can't beat Spider-Man. He's a regular guy. So he's slowly moving him around this building, bumping him off things, throwing glass pieces that aren't there, dropping him from whatever. And then he slowly moves him into the front of a train where the train comes along and just plows him. And Quentin's like, I did it. I win. It's just, like you said, it's just so pretty. And it's something, my jaw was dropped through the entire scene. Like, we've seen some really cool stuff. Doctor Strange, some really trippy, psychedelic stuff. But this reminded me of, like, Inception from here on out. It's like, at what point did he ever leave the illusion? Is he still, like, he got hit by a train, he got knocked out, woke up in a Norwegian jail with these... Norwegian jail, right? With a bunch of these like super friendly guys.
Dutch jail.
Is that what it is?
Dutch jail.
The Netherlands.
Like, and this is one of my nitpicks in the movie is I kind of wish they would have leaned into this a little bit more. The ending of the movie, I mean, they did great with it. Don't get me wrong, but I kind of expected him to Beck to kind of play the like, oh, I have your girlfriend, I'm gonna kill her, and then it turns out to not be her at the end. And I don't think he ended up doing that at all, does he?
Doesn't he?
He does it in the vision.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
not
he
at the end.
he
But not
never
at the end
actually takes her.
So I kind of expected it at the end on the bridge for them to kind of explore that a little bit more, which they did, but not to the extent that I kind of expected. But yeah, like...
At the end, he just uses the Peter Tinkle.
The Peter Tingle.
I hate that name so much, and so does Peter Parker. And then he finally accepts it, though, like what everyone else is calling it, and that's when he gets his mojo back. You might say, right? It's there, and yeah, just going back to the scene and the creative ideas behind it. We never really know, I think, what is sometimes what we're fed to become reality versus what really is reality, right? Because I don't know, it can change in an instant, and this is kind of where Beck really shows off his storytelling as an individual, but also where Marvel shows us that they can get us to believe and fall in love and kind of go into have a heartbreak for a villain. Because I was sad at the end when Beck fell. Like, to be honest with you, when Mysterio fell, I was so sad. Because I kind of hoped for him to be able to step up and to rise up and really, I don't know if you want to call it make a dent. I didn't want him to be gone. I want him to kind of be a bigger player like Thanos does become. But I also don't know if he's really dead or not, actually. At the end of that movie, my belief on whether or not Mysterio is gone is completely in limbo right now. It's just out there. Who knows?
And so they kind of cleaned it up with Edith the glasses saying there are no holograms showing right now.
But what if she's been changed and
that's
edited?
What I was going to say. What if that was a hologram in itself?
Like, what was up with, there was that one scene that never really got explained where even after Spider-Man has won the fight and everything like that, you see what's-his-face nerd guy, like, pulling the flash drive from the computer and, you know, getting away with it. Never caught. Like, something's going on there.
I'm with you, Casey. Like, what if Beck still has control of Edith? And that whole thing of him getting the glasses, well, maybe that wouldn't work. He actually put the glasses on his face, but like, who knows what kind of reality was involved there? Was Quentin really dead? Is he really going to show up again later in the movies? I would love for him to come back.
What if Peter Parker is just still dreaming? You talked about Inception. It's just
a bunch
still
of drones
all the
following
holograms.
He doesn't have some sort of top or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been thinking about that, and I thought about that a little bit today. What if, right? What if Peter is dreaming? What if Beck has somehow, like, built his illusions out so much that it's not just, you know, perception, but also physical space that they've gotten? What if he's just wearing, like, a pair of old Ray-Bans when he's like thinking that, and Beck's illusions have worked? So I don't know. I'm curious to see how they set that up a little bit more.
I think it would be really cool if, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but if Beck survived and he goes to Tombs and he's like, okay, we need to talk about the after credits scene. Peter, so his identity gets shown. Crazy twist. We haven't had a Spider-Man movie that happens.
Yeah.
And he also shows the footage of what appears to have Spider-Man turning on or in control of the drones, telling the drones to kill people. So he is able to trick at least part of the world into thinking that Spider-Man is evil. So that's a really cool way that they set up the that kind of Jameson. I mean, and also awesome, J. Jonah Jameson is back. Hype that up.
Oh,
like how cool is that? That
the
they brought him
Daily
back
Bugle,
the perfect way. And so they're able to set up this classic Spider-Man trope where some of the people believe he's a good guy, some of the people believe he's a bad guy. Meanwhile, there's a reporter who's just constantly pushing that agenda of he's evil, he's evil, he's evil. So I was thinking, like, if Beck shows up, he's still alive. He goes to Adrian Toomes from the Vulture from the first one, tells him, let's work together. You tell the world that Spider-Man framed you. Spider-Man was the one trying to steal all that Stark gear. Spider-Man, you tried to stop him, and he framed you. Those two get together. They go team up with a Scorpion, track down the Chameleon, maybe a Doc Ock, Kingpin. We could be moving towards a Sinister Six movie here.
I would love that so much. Actually, and sorry, this kind of like, what is with Marvel? And you kind of brought this up. What is with Marvel not keeping secret anyone's identities in these films? It seems like they're just in the comics, right? And in some of the animated series, it's such a secretive thing. But Marvel is just willingly just Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Everyone know that.
Is there anyone left that
That's
their
right.
identity is not known? I mean, we've
I don't
had
think
so many
so.
people exit.
I mean, everybody on the Avengers team had to sign the Accord, so
that's true.
everybody there knows. They know who they are. I think Spider-Man was literally the only one who didn't. Unless you count, like, the Netflix series, but we don't count those, right?
Yeah, not really. In a really quick way, because we could make this a big discussion, but let's keep it quick. Did this feel more like the end of the Infinity Saga or the beginning of Phase 4 for Marvel? Or both?
I have to say both. They wrapped up so much, but they presented so much. Like, they put a close to Tony's legacy. I'm sure he'll come up in other things, or at least talked about. But the way they set up Spider-Man to be the next leader, it's that bridge. I feel like I don't think it's an ending, or it's both.
Yeah, I think it
be.
sits in that fine middle ground for me personally, and I think that where you really kind of see the real transition moment of it all is when they are floating above the tulip field in the Netherlands, and he's back there just going crazy on all of the technology. And, Happy turns around and has that nostalgic moment where he gets, a little glimmer in his eye and sees Tony, but now sees Peter taking that mantle and stepping where... I'm getting goosebumps talking about this because I'm so excited about it. But he sees where Peter is filling the shoes and stepping up to being that leader because he's creating his own tech. He's choosing what he wants to be there. And that's what Tony was doing for everyone else, kind of. He knew what their strengths were, and he was just providing them with assets or to do so. And now here's Peter, who's choosing everything that he wants. He doesn't now no longer have that test mode on his spider suit, but what he has is full access and the ability to control what is happening next. I don't know. What do you think, Josh?
I agree. I thought it was, when I first saw it, or when I first heard about it, I just thought that it was weird to have another movie be the end to the Infinity Saga, because Avengers Endgame is literally like the culmination of the entire series. Yeah. So to say that the end of the saga is like one more movie, it didn't make sense to me, but I feel like it makes sense so that they can sort of, not in a bad way, but force upon your mind, like, these new movies that are coming out, they're not just new movies that, like they have some of the same characters and stuff. It's the continuation of the story. It's the history of these people that you've grown to love. Things change, and this is changing, but it's the continuation. So I agree that it's both, and I think that it was really smart for them to do that, to say, hey, this is the end of the Infinity Saga, but because it gives you the transition to what we're going to hopefully love just as much next.
This is the rainbow bridge to the Bifrost, which can take us anywhere. So, yeah, sorry. Just wanted to throw that in there.
No, I think that's a good place to end it. Go see Spider-Man, guys. It's such a good movie.
Amazing. All three, of course, of us recommend it very highly. definitely go and see it. Listen to the podcast. Always we'd love to hear your feedback. Give us a 5-star rating. You can check us out, of course, on our different social medias, which we've talked about on our other ones. Next week, we're going to keep it going with this new movie trend that we've been going on lately, and we're going to be seeing one that we've all been pretty hyped about, Midsummer.
I honestly forgot the name of it for a second there.
Something that happens in the Swedish lands.
Midsummer, directed by Ari Aster, is, I think. If I butchered that, I'm so sorry. But
what else does he direct one more time, just so people kind of know where his background is coming from? Because he did a film that we all liked from last year.
Yeah.
Hereditary.
And that's the only one that really matters.
Yep. So
I don't know the rest of his filmography.
He has a bunch of other small. I think he has like a couple of small films, but he does Hereditary. So if you know kind of a little bit about Hereditary, the type of thriller it was, I'm expecting something very similar. So just excited about it. So I hope that it really lives up to the hype.
yeah.
So go see that. Listen next week. Check out the Instagram, Pause, Rewind, Play podcast. We look forward to talking about this next one.
Yeah, for sure. It's all going to be great. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in and talking about movies with us. We're super happy to have you with us, and we will see you next time.